Hey everyone, we are going to talk about a British chocolate maker today. Duffy's Chocolate, the parent company or the holding company, or I don't know how it works, but Red Star Chocolate is I actually don't know how it works. Red Star Chocolate makes Duffy's, they're all the same company. Anyway, so we're going to talk about Duffy's today. It was founded in 2007, 2008, maybe 2010. I got such conflicting information, I wasn't sure. So somewhere around the late 2000s by Gerald Duffy Sheardown, and he was originally a data engineer who worked for 25 years in the motor racing, Formula One. He started off as a mechanic, then he started building cars, and then he was managing world famous teams for race cars. And he lived all over the world. He lived in the UK, he lived in Italy, he lived in France, he lived in America. So right there, top 4 most important chocolate making countries right there. But he was looking to retire from racing, and he happened to be driving around with his wife, listening to BBC Radio 4, a show called The Food Program. And on there they were talking about how that Cadbury's was the only chocolate manufacturer in the UK that made from bean rather than from cocoa mass. So that's like just the ground up bean. So typical motor racing phrase kind of thing would be, he thought, how hard could it be? So he decided to go to Guatemala and see for himself exactly how hard could it be to make chocolate. He then came back and decided not hard enough to stop him, so he started sourcing secondhand small-scale equipment, where it sure probably comes in handy being a mechanic, being able to repair and make changes to your own equipment. Because of that background as a data scientist and motor racing, where you have to be, he really believes in the scientific approach and is a perfectionist. You have to be a perfectionist to shave those seconds off of your lap time. So when he was learning to make chocolate and refining his process, he practiced and tested and changed one thing at a time, making extensive notes, so that he went through the entire process and tasted every batch and compared the flavor and texture if he changed this one thing, and was very meticulous about making his chocolate. So he started his factory up in North Lincolnshire in England. I was a little confused about this. If North Lincolnshire is the town, I'm also probably pronouncing it not correctly. And I'm also not going to pronounce this one correctly properly. So I think North Lincolnshire is part of the town of Cleethorpes? I'm not sure, but anyway, it's that kind of general area where he has his factory. He only does single harvest batches. He does 30 kilograms of chocolate at a time, which takes 4 days for him to do. So that makes about 300 bars, 2 days to like roast and winnow and crack them and conch, 1 day to pour and mold, and then 1 day to wrap the bars. So he's a small scale producer. He's also one of the founders of Direct Cacao, which I will talk about at the end. So it's kind of difficult to get his chocolate in the United States. You can get it from a few online places. I have 2 bars. I have his Venezuela Acumare 55% milk and his Honduras Mayan Red. They're both award-winning bars. I'm going to try this Honduras bar because I've had lots of bars made with Venezuelan beans. I haven't had that many made with Honduras beans. So I'm going to give this one a try. So we'll open this one up and see how it tastes. All right, so here we are. We have It's Duffy's Fine, so the milk chocolate. So this is actually a dark milk. Beans from Honduras. Mayan red is the type of bean. So he sources this from, I don't know how to say that word properly, XOCO beans. This is one of their cultivars. So the Mayan red cultivar dates back to the original Mayan trees that are genetically unique to Honduras. So they found the mother trees on the northern coastal jungles of Honduras, and they've got a unique taste. So this is 61% cacao solids, single origin, so only from one place, no blend, Criollo cocoa beans, artisan bean to bar, directly traded. I'll talk about a little bit more about that later. And notes of sweet currants. I'm going to talk more about this one too, because this is confusing depending on which side of the Atlantic Ocean you're on. Okay, so we won't look at the tasting notes right now. He directly traded from this. This is a company that does. It's like a growing co-op that sources high quality beans and sells them to artisan manufacturers. So here's the ingredients: cocoa beans, cane sugar, cocoa butter, and milk powder. So sounds good. No extra stuff. So no soy lecithin, gluten-free, soy-free, does have milk powder. Gives you the milk solid percentage. What else does he have? Okay, so here's the thing. So I saw that his factory was in either Humberston, Cleethorpes, or North Lincolnshire. I suspect they're all kind of the same place. It's just the way England describes geography. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so I like this. Slowly unwrap, smell the aroma, savor fine chocolate. Yes, I will. So he's got the batch number on here. Best before 2020, single batch. Like I said, he makes small batches, 30 kilos at a time. Let's see if we can open this nicely. Let me see. Okay. So he's been working with this cooperative in Honduras since 2011. They sell grafted saplings to small farmers and give them a 30-year contract to buy the pods back at a far higher price. Wow, that's great. That's nice to see when makers are concerned with that. Okay, so he gives you little directions on how to taste the bar here. So break off a piece, clean snap, that tells you about the temper. Warm it between your fingers. That cocoa butter melts around body temperature, so you can release the aromas by melting the cocoa butter, and then you let it slowly melt in your mouth and determine the flavor notes. So here's some information about the first small chocolate maker in the UK. Handmade fine chocolate. There it is. Lincolnshire. So there's another place. I think it's just the same way to describe the same place. Okay. And all done by hand. All right. So let's open this bar up. Oh, it's so pretty. I hope this is coming through on the camera. It's got such a nice color to it. Nice mold. Really well tempered, well poured, and you don't get any of those swirls that you sometimes see, no bubbles. You can tell that he's really put his time into figuring this out. I don't want to break it. All right, let's take a look. So it is a milk bar, so it's not going to have a super huge snap. And it's a little warm in my house today, so it's pretty good for a milk bar. I mean, it is milk, so we'll see. Let's warm it up a little and see what we can smell. All right, so when I'm warming this up, I get a raisin kind of smell, a little bit of sweet, and a little bit of cocoa. So let's take a piece and see how it tastes. All right, so I had to eat a little bit of this to figure out the flavors. It's such a balanced bar. It's got a nice temper. It looks pretty fine grain, but it is only ever so slightly gritty. It's not quite as silky as I thought it would be with the addition of the cocoa butter, but it's not bad. It's still really good. It has, the aroma is raisins to me, and I would say when I taste it, I get the fruit, I get the raisins, and I would call it honey. Now, here's where cultural differences come in tasting. So when I look at his notes, tasting notes on the back, his tasting notes say balanced. Yes, that's why I had to eat like quite a large chunk to figure out the flavors, because they're so well balanced. It's subtle flavors. Hints of sweet currants, blueberries, and dark treacle. Okay, so when I was talking to Martin Christie, when I was doing some tasting with Martin Christie, we had a discussion about currants, because he described something as currants and I described it as raisins. And I think we were actually talking about the same thing, because I think and if somebody knows for sure, correct me, because this is confusing to me. As a botanist, a currant is a plant in the Saxifrageaceae family that grows in North America. It makes these little berries, and that's what I think of when I think of currants. When I think that currants in the UK are sometimes dried grapes, which is the same thing as raisins. There's also a term I've heard, Zante currants, which I also think are dried grapes. So this is confusing to me. Could I identify the difference between a currant and a raisin? No, because I haven't eaten enough currants to do that. I would call this raisin flavor. Blueberries, very, very subtle. And the dark treacle. So treacle is another cultural difference. I would call it honey. If you haven't so when I think of treacle, my experience has been with something called Lyle's Golden Syrup, which I don't know how else to, it's kind of like halfway between honey and corn syrup. It's golden syrup. I don't know how else to describe it. Treacle. So I guess it depends on where you're from, how you would describe that flavor. He's describing it as a dark treacle. So I would say like a caramelized honey, or a caramelized syrup, a caramelized corn syrup kind of taste. But he's calling that as treacle. So that's kind of fun to see the cultural differences in how you would describe a chocolate and the flavors that come out in a chocolate. You see that a lot of time and when you do lead tastings and people don't have the cultural experience to grasp the words for some of the flavors in chocolate. It's a nice bar. I really like it. He's done a good job on the looks. It's beautiful to look at. Good to eat. It's a nice dark milk. The beans have been treated well. I keep popping pieces in my mouth. It's really good. It's not too sweet. You can taste the cocoa. So let me tell you a little bit more about Direct Cacao, which is one of the organizations that he helped found. Okay, that was a good bar. It's nice, leaving a nice aftertaste in my mouth that is satiating. All right, so let's talk about Direct Cacao. So Duffy Sheardown is one of the members of this collective, and it is an organization. I'm going to read you their vision goal. So Direct Cacao is a collective of ethical growers, chocolate makers, and industrial professionals dedicated to the sustainability of the world's cacao farms, ensuring appropriate compensation. So it's a relationship with the makers and the farmers it's a direct trade relationship that they have going on. It's a relationship based on value and respect on both sides. They pay the farmers for the value of their work for creating not just commodity cacao, but fine quality cacao. Some of the other people that were part of the founding of this are Martin Christie of 70%, Gary Guittard from Guittard Chocolate, Art Pollard from Amano, Frank Maron, Mikhail Friesholm. So lots of names that you would be familiar with in the fine chocolate industry. So it's nice to see that once again the craft chocolate makers are leading the way in sustainability, in honest economic trade, and treating people with respect. The other interesting thing, just one more thing I want to tell you about Duffy Sheardown. I read a quote from him that he is not a foodie. And then he went on to say, I don't like meat, cheese, or dairy, or most veggies. He does like spicy food and cake. And then he says, it's embarrassing, really. I don't know. It's kind of funny that someone who would be creating fine craft quality chocolate with all these flavor nuances doesn't really like a lot of other fine foods like cheese and dairy and meat. And so I thought it was kind of funny. Anyway, so that's Duffy's chocolate out of England. This is a nice dark milk chocolate. I'll have to try the Venezuela later. Both award winners. This one is the Academy of Chocolate, and this one has won the International Chocolate Awards. So if you can get your hands on Duffy chocolate, I would recommend it just to get the flavor experience. So that's this week's chocolate maker. Next week, I think we're going to go across the pond again and head back to the United States and do a American chocolate maker next week. So if you like learning about the chocolate makers and having a tasting experience with me, be sure to subscribe and you'll get a new video every Thursday. Thanks.